What's up, cool people? My name's Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer, and welcome to tonight's live stream. We've got some more Bible study lined up, and then just kind of chilling and hanging out. Hi, Seth. Hope you're doing well. So, we would be continuing our Bible study going through the book of Job. Today we'll be covering chapters 23 and 24, which, like, we're already multiple rounds of conversation between Job and his friends into this thing, so, you know, the hope for some new conversation points continues to grow at this point, as you know, things have been a bit repetitive in the past few chapters. But even with that being the case, there's still been some like little things here and there to kind of look at a little bit deeper and still get a different thought out of each respective chapter. And yeah, after that, it's a new month, so I'll be playing some Gems of War. New Mythic Troop coming tomorrow in that game. And I don't want to necessarily steal somebody else's content, so I won't be showing the video that I have found, but there's a video I found on Reddit where somebody is like previewing what seems like it's going to be the new Mythic Troop coming in tomorrow. I'm not going to show their whole preview analysis thing or whatever you want to call it, but I will be at least able to give a kind of still image of it if anyone's interested. In any case, that is what I've got lined up for tonight. So, yeah, not too much else to say, I don't think. Seth has requested some random exercise. That will, I guess, come in, you know, later ad breaks. As things stand, I'm probably going to go ahead and roll the first one, the first ad break that is on Twitch. And then see you folks over there on the other side. Meanwhile, pinning that message about the random exercise stuff. Okay. And then I gotta get my capture stuff, or at least, you know, the right scene in OBS. So, partially for the sake of doing my little Gems of War troop preview image thing, I set up a new scene in OBS. But it's literally the same as the, like, PC game screen capture scene that I have, except for the other monitor. Because if I'm just, like, browsing around stuff on, you know, the internet, like, that's not going to, like, tend to be on one particular monitor or the other by default, so I can choose to have it on this side. So anyway, I think we're just about ready to hop in. Ad break should be done. So, here we go. Okay. We're looking at Job chapter 23 now. So last chapter, so we know what Job will be responding to. Eliphaz just outright said that Job is wicked. Quote, "There is no limit to your sins." So then he gave a bunch of examples of things Job could possibly have done to deserve being punished by God. You know, assuming all the stuff that happened to him, like losing a bunch of the stuff that he owned and his children and being afflicted with boils and things like that. Assuming Eliphaz and Job's other friends in this conversation are assuming that that is a punishment from God for some kind of sin. Eliphaz, I think, might have been the first one to say outright that he believes Job is wicked and sinful, and that's why all this stuff has happened to him. Of course, we know from the early chapters that it's not because Job sinned that all this stuff happened to him. It's not even necessarily a punishment. It was just a dude called Satan up in heaven was like, no, to put him to the test after God pointed out Job as like a great example of a righteous man. So, anyway, Eliphaz has that assumption about Job, lists some things Job could possibly have done that would have angered God, and then tells him to turn back to God and everything will be made right again. I'm not going to give you a full summary of the rest of the conversation because there's been a bunch of back and forth on various points, and if anything else from the conversation comes up that is relevant in what Job says in this chapter, then I'll bring it up, but I don't feel like I need to keep mentioning the general gist of the entire conversation as we're 20 chapters into it now. And if I do that every time, it's just gonna keep taking a little bit more time and a little bit more time. And by the time the book of Job is over, that would be like half the video. But anyway, speaking of not taking half the video with introducing things and giving context, let's get started. Job chapter 23. Then Job spoke again. My complaint today is still a bitter one, and I try hard not to groan aloud. If only I knew where to find God, I would go to his court. I would lay out my case and present my arguments. Then I would listen to his reply and understand what he says to me. Would he use his great power to argue with me? No, he would give me a fair hearing. Honest people can reason with him, so I would be forever acquitted by my judge. I go east, but he is not there. I go west, but I cannot find him. I do not see him in the north, for he is hidden. I look to the south, but he is concealed. Okay, so this is very directly responding to, like, the last point that Eliphaz made in the previous chapter. Eliphaz was just saying, all right, dude, just go to God and, you know, follow his commands, seek his wisdom, and you'll be good. Job comes back in his response here and is like, I'm trying to seek God. No matter where I look, I cannot seem to find him. And he's saying if he could find him, he would talk to God about this whole situation. Like, knowing that God is just and righteous and fair, I don't know, is fair something that is technically, or fairness, something that is technically attributed to God in the Bible? I'm not as sure about that. Just and righteous, yes, for sure. So even with just being, righteous and just, even just knowing that, Job could go to God and feel confident that, God's not going to smite him for no reason, or put up a completely unreasonable argument even against Job. But again, Job does not seem, it seems pretty clear that throughout this, time where Job has been suffering and mourning and whatnot, after all the stuff he's had to deal with, he does not feel like he is able to communicate directly with God. Certainly not hear from God or, sense God trying to tell him things. He might be trying to communicate to God, but he doesn't know of anything that he's getting back. And in verse 7 here, he mentions that honest people can reason with him, so I would be forever acquitted by my judge. So that implies that he believes God would basically declare him innocent because he knows he is an honest man. That's also something to point out, because he has had to listen to his friends assume and even possibly accuse, in some cases, him of lying to them. They figure, whether intentionally or not, that Job doesn't realize the truth, that he is a wicked, sinful man. But Job has not been lying to them. So anyway, there's the first little section there. I don't have anything else really in mind to say about that, other than, the last couple of verses, obviously it mentions the 4 cardinal directions, as they're called, pretty much just as a way of Job saying, I have looked everywhere and cannot seem to find God. So, after that, Job continues in verse 10, and this is all kind of one chunk of speech until the end of the chapter, so I guess I'll read all the way through. But he knows where I am going, and when he tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. For I have stayed on God's paths. I have followed his ways and not turned aside. I have not departed from his commands, but have treasured his words more than daily food. But once he has made his decision, who can change his mind? Whatever he wants to do, he does. So he will do to me whatever he has planned. He controls my destiny. No wonder I am so terrified in his presence. When I think of it, terror grips me. God has made me sick at heart. The Almighty has terrified me. Darkness is all around me. Thick, impenetrable darkness is everywhere. If it seems like it's dark all around him, that might be another way of maybe not necessarily a way of alluding to his inability to quote unquote find God, but kind of a connected thought perhaps. Because God is generally associated with light rather than darkness. And so if it's dark all around Job and he can't find the light, then that it's implied metaphorically that he then can't seem to find God. But we've talked about that point already. General gist I get from this second kind of paragraph is that Job is saying God's in control of it, essentially. Like, whatever case he might try to argue against God, like, God's mind wouldn't really be changed. Like, God decides to do what he does for a reason. We might not know the reason all the time, but, like, trying to argue with God to say, like, hey, you're wrong, stop this, isn't gonna fly. And now, as far as Job being, like, terrified in God's presence, this is, sort of conjecture on my part, but I gotta imagine it's largely because, of all this stuff that Job has experienced in this testing, and, like, possibly then add to that a realization that God could even do so much more, so much worse and more terrifying, and even just more in general. And so, like, then the thought of how much worse it could possibly get, to the point of it maybe even being beyond comprehension, like, that could legitimately be a terrifying thought if you really ponder on that for a while and in detail. But, yeah. Job is, like, in a way, he wants to find God and talk this out, but at the same time, it seems very clear to him that God wants him to go through what he's going through for whatever reason. So, it's not even necessarily that Job wants to try and change God's mind. I guess it's more so that he just, like, wants to get his pain and overall thoughts on his pain off of his chest. And clearly nobody else around him right now really wants to listen to him. So, whether or not that's the case, like, who better to talk to about your struggles than God? It was, Job previously said, I believe, that, despite all this stuff, all this suffering that it seems like God has put him through, like, God is still the one who is most able to change the situation if he so desires. So who better to take your pain, your sadness, your anger, your whatever, all of the things, who better to take that to than God? because God is ultimately able to do the most with that. Also, making sure that I don't skip over this. Job is specifically, again, defending himself, saying that he is innocent. In this case, wording it as, I have not departed from his commands, or I have stayed on God's paths. So, directly refuting Eliphaz's claim that he is a wicked, sinful man. So, yeah, the order might have been a bit backwards, but Job essentially responded to Eliphaz's primary claims and said, yeah, no, here's the truth of my situation. So, yeah, not a terribly long chapter, so I'm not going to try and go on about any particular point that I would probably just start talking in circles around anyway. I guess that'll do it for Job chapter 23. Okay, the next chapter is a little bit longer, but also not like long. Let me get some water here real quick. Okay. On we go. Okay. We've made it to Job chapter 24. Last chapter, Job responded to one of his friends, Eliphaz. Eliphaz claimed that Job was a wicked man and must have done at least one of a number of potential things to get God angry with him, or at least, like, bring punishment upon Job, and then basically said, turn from your wickedness and to God, and things will get better again. But Job responded like, I am trying to turn to God. I'm looking for him everywhere and cannot seem to find him, or at least can't seem to hear from him. And for the record, no, I am not the wicked, sinful man you claim I am. I have followed God's commands and sought after him this entire time. But God has made up his mind. For whatever reason, he wants to do this stuff to me, or at least wants me to go through it. And so I would love to, plead my case with God, because he's the one who'd be able to change my situation anyway. But is it going to make a difference? I don't know. But Job is now going to continue, maybe not so much in a direct response to Eliphaz, so much as maybe just, saying more of what's on his mind about the general situation, whether his specifically or just life as a whole, as the subtitle here kind of implies. That seems more like a general situation and not something specific to him. And for those that missed the early chapters, long story short, God pointed Job out as a righteous man to being called Satan in heaven, and Satan said to put him to the test, and so then Job lost like everything that he had, including his children, and was afflicted with boils, and he has said a little bit after that he's experiencing all these like disturbing visions, and so yeah, there's Job's situation. That's the context for whatever he might say, think, feel in this moment, as well as the more recent context from the past couple of chapters that I already sort of summarized. So, here we go. Job chapter 24. Why doesn't the Almighty bring the wicked to judgment? Why must the godly wait for him in vain? Evil people steal land by moving the boundary markers. They steal livestock and put them in their own pastures. They take the orphan's donkey and demand the widow's ox as security for a loan. The poor are pushed off the path. The needy must hide together for safety. Like wild donkeys in the wilderness, the poor must spend all their time looking for food, searching even in the desert for food for their children. They harvest a field they do not own, and they glean in the vineyards of the wicked. All night they lie naked in the cold, without clothing or covering. They are soaked by mountain showers, and they huddle against the rocks for want of a home. Okay. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I don't think this is Job trying to give a general sense of, like, how the majority of things go in life. But he is at least arguing that there are some cases like these that he has just explained. His friends in this conversation have all insisted that God punishes the wicked, and that, you know, the righteous will get good things, essentially. And other similar thoughts. But Job here is kind of outlining the apparent injustice of things that happen in this world. Well, that doesn't mean that God is unjust, but we live in a broken, sinful world in general, and so that, like, comes with the territory, so to speak. That there are things that just don't seem right, but still happen. I am not going to attempt to make modern day comparisons for all of these things, because I fear if I did, I could very easily ruffle some feathers, and that's not what I'm here to do in this particular video series. If we wanted to talk about it later, or shoot, if anybody else brings it up and wants to go there, I might. But anyway, I digress. So, yeah, like, wicked people not being brought to justice. Sorry. Man. The wicked people not being brought to justice. Poor people shoved aside. Literally sometimes. And the rich, evil people taking things from the poor orphans. Like, I mean, at least to make some general comparisons to that today, like, how much do, you know, wicked people in this day and age, especially if they're wealthy, just do sometimes just ridiculously evil things simply because they feel like they can get away with it. I mean, case in point, the whole Epstein situation, without naming any other names except the namesake of that whole situation. Like, it's people, like, literally just abusing and defiling others because they think they can get away with it, is what that boils down to. So, like, this level of wickedness going seemingly unpunished exists in our time. For some reason, I can't remember why, but the whole line about harvesting a field they don't own, it rings a bell and makes me think that there's some other reference somewhere in the Bible that, like, you know, refers back to this phrase here. Maybe after I'm done getting through the chapter, I could try and look that up. You know what? Pausing the recording. I've got a little time. Let me see if I try to look that up. If I get anything. I don't know if it'll come up in here, but let's see. Harvest a field they do not own. I realize y'all don't see everything that I'm typing because I kind of made the window such that it doesn't show the full thing in order for it to be a little bit bigger and bolder what I'm reading when I am normally reading. Anyway, just laws and stuff in Leviticus. Huh. Nothing's really coming up here. At least nothing that it shows is quite the same in, like, these. No. Okay. I just thought I would give it a shot. Alright. Well, whatever. I guess I'll continue on now. Okay, so, for the moment at least, I've tried to look that up and didn't quite find anything. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and move along for this chapter. On to verse 9. The wicked snatch a widow's child from her breast, taking the baby as security for a loan. The poor must go about naked, without any clothing. They harvest food for others while they themselves are starving. They press out olive oil without being allowed to taste it. And they tread in the winepress as they suffer from thirst. The groans of the dying rise from the city, and the wounded cry for help, yet God ignores their moaning. Wicked people rebel against the light. They refuse to acknowledge its ways or stay in its paths. The murderer rises in the early dawn to kill the poor and needy. At night he is a thief. The adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, "No one will see me then." He hides his face so no one will know him. Thieves break into houses at night and sleep in the daytime. They are not acquainted with the light. The black night is their morning. They ally themselves with the terrors of the darkness. I mean, in a way, this is kind of more of the same, honestly. Just Job giving some more examples of wicked people and the things they do because they think they can get away with it. And explaining that part of how they try and get away with it is because they live in the dark. If they lived in the light, their deeds would be exposed. But they do these things at times and in places where it seems like nobody's going to be able to catch them. So, of course, they wouldn't be acquainted with God. You know, God, again, kind of, as I mentioned last chapter, I think, representing light more so. Often being light. I mean, you know, God, when leading the Israelites through the wilderness after they fled Egypt, God led them by a cloud during the day, but also with fire at night, so that they could see. And there are other examples of times when God has shown himself to people and been like a blinding light, or maybe not even God necessarily, even just angels. Or like, you know, Jesus showing himself to Paul on the road to Damascus. Very bright. In fact, so bright in that case that Paul was blinded, at least temporarily. But anyway, I guess it's not just talking about wicked people doing things they think they can get away with, but also talking more about poor and how they like have to work so hard, but most of it's benefiting other people more than themselves. Once again, seems like there's some relevance to that in today's just overall society. Seems in a way almost like the poorer that you are, the more work you have to put in for somebody else before you can even like sniff any of the benefits of what you're doing. But anyway, I think I've pretty much said my thoughts on that section. So we'll move along to verse 18. I guess Job is still talking about the wicked people. So, they in this case is wicked people, starting in verse 18. But they disappear like foam down a river. Everything they own is cursed, and they are afraid to enter their own vineyards. The grave consumes sinners, just as drought and heat consume snow. Their own mothers will forget them. Maggots will find them sweet to eat. No one will remember them. Wicked people are broken like a tree in the storm. They cheat the woman who has no son to help her. They refuse to help the needy widow. God in his power drags away the rich. They may rise high, but they have no assurance of life. They may be allowed to live in security, but God is always watching them. And though they are great now, in a moment they will be gone like all others, cut off like heads of grain. Can anyone claim otherwise? Who can prove me wrong? Okay, so Job is essentially now saying something that his friends have said a bunch in this conversation, that wicked people may seem to prosper for a time, but eventually they are, if not brought to justice, at least brought low in some way. Which is interesting because it seems like up to this point, Job has almost been attempting to refute that. Maybe now he's acknowledging that he knows eventually these wicked people are brought to justice in some way or another. Out of context of what he said, even if the justice comes after this life rather than during it, they are eventually brought to justice. That still doesn't make it seem like it's fair or right that these wicked people are allowed to prosper however long they might be able to prosper. Like, is someone getting away with murder even for a brief time really... Does that really seem like it's okay? Just because we think they'll eventually get caught and, put in prison or executed for it? No, it doesn't make it seem right at all in the moment. It's still murder. So, Job bringing up the unfairness of wicked people's prosperity isn't even necessarily him disagreeing with his friends on the fact that they're eventually brought to justice. It's more so perhaps him bemoaning the general unfairness of life. Which, of course, in his situation, life feels very unfair at that moment. He has done nothing wrong, and yet has lost everything except his life. And I guess, debatably, his wife as well. But even she doesn't really want anything to do with him right now. Because, well, A, she doesn't think it's worth him persisting despite all these, troubles. And B, he said himself that she basically wants nothing to do with him. She thinks he smells bad, or at least his breath does, or something like that. And that was mentioned in a bunch of just general ridicule that he described he received from his family. But in any case, yeah, Job is, I think, just overall, again, crying out against the unfairness of life. But God being just and God being fair, air quote, are not necessarily the same thing. Like, fairness kind of implies that, everything is amicable between people, and that, like, nobody's doing anything particularly wrong to anyone else or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, people and sin in general mess up the fairness dynamic. So, whether or not you believe God is fair, life just isn't fair, and people aren't fair. So, God's justice does not hinge upon that by any stretch. There's a footnote here in verse 18 where the Hebrew says Sheol instead of the grave. We've covered this a few times before, just general kind of broad afterlife type concept, also often called the pit, where it's like, I mean, the grave we also today tend to use as sort of an analogy for just like death in general. So, even just saying death consumes sinners, like, I mean, it consumes everyone, but still, that's not exactly a real important point to the overall messages within the chapter. I'm just realizing I said absolutely nothing about any notes from the previous chapter. I'm going to double check real quick to make sure I didn't miss any. Nope. Okay, it was just a short chapter that didn't have any translator notes. So, in response to Job's questions at the end here of the chapter, like, if his friends start disagreeing with him now, at least regarding what he said about wicked people, it seems to me like they would then start refuting themselves and their own earlier claims. Now that Job has essentially said, yeah, wicked people, they do eventually fall from their lofty positions. You know, their prosperity is only temporary. And that's exactly what Job's friends were saying for multiple chapters. So anyway, I don't really have any other thoughts on the chapter here. So that'll do it for Job 24. I'm a little curious. Next chapter. Oh, geez. The next chapter is really short. Maybe I should have included that. You know what? No. Because the chapter after that isn't particularly long either. Ah, geez. Well, now I'm messing up the dynamic a little bit of what chapters are going to go when, but I'm not going to get beyond... I'm not going to do chapter 25 right now, nor stuff beyond that. But I'm already thinking I might just combine chapters 25 and 26 next week. 27 seems to be long enough to probably keep its own thing. Just noting that that's then gonna slightly mess up the timing of chapters moving forward and which ones release when. Right now, with my release schedule of, you know, the individual chapter edits, I would end up, you know, ending the week on an even-numbered chapter, which Job does have an even number of chapters. That also means I would be going from one book to another within the same stream, potentially, later on. But, you know what? I can make a more solid decision on that later. Like, a week from today later, even if I think that's what I need to do. Okay. Still got decent amount of time before an ad break. This seems like a perfect time for some random exercise. Let me pull up my notes real quick for the exercise stuff. I got my dice ready this time, but I didn't necessarily have my exercise list at the ready. Okay. So let's see what we get. First, the exercise in question. Bloop. Rolled a 4, which leaves me with push-ups. Okay. How many push-ups per set will I attempt? That is a 3. And attempting how many sets? And there's a 6. Okay. So, going for 18, I guess. All right, real quick, while I've got my phone opened up here, just taking a look at the notifications. Don't really care much about those. Alrighty. Get my chair out of the way here. I'm gonna start exercising. I might want to turn on my little fan here too. Even though it's a brief exercise, honestly. Do I need the mat for push-ups? Maybe not necessarily. But this way I won't end up wrecking my sandals, and also hopefully won't, like, you know, have my feet slip on me. Okay. Admittedly, I'm not sure why, but, like, my right arm feels, I don't know, some kind of way that's not normal, and hopefully this doesn't make it worse. I don't assume that it will. But anyway. Okay, here we go. Just trying to figure out what I want to do for, like, width of my push-ups. Alrighty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Ugh. Man. Alright. That wasn't so bad. Felt it a little bit, but I realistically could have done a few more before I just, like, collapsed to the floor. Was not exactly comfortable for my wrists, though. Maybe, should think about maybe not going quite so wide, and, well, I don't know if having my wrists, like, if having my hands on the mat would help that a ton. Anyway, okay. We do not have 2 exercises left to redeem anymore. We are down to just 1. Let me get a little more water here. So, tell you what, just so I can have it pinned as a hopeful reminder, okay, pin that. And I'm thinking right now I would rather do the next ad break on Twitch while I set stuff up for the game, and then maybe when we come back from that I could show you the little preview image that I believe is going to be the next mythic troop in Gems of War. But all that to say, ad break first. Twitch folks, I'll see you afterwards. Okay. Gotta make sure I don't get like cords too messed up here. Just the way the cord for my controller was sitting, it seemed very much like my microphone stand was gonna like kind of get tangled up in it. Alright, so there's that. And let me bring up the window in question. We'll have the image I am seeking to share. Okay. It looks like whatever else is going on in the video that I found this in, they're still just gonna have that image showing. And I'm not here to get into a whole analysis kind of thing. I'm just gonna show y'all what it looks like. Before I do that, though, one more thing. Changing stream category on Twitch. Boom. Okay. Category changed. Now, it might not be super high quality, but this right here appears to be what the next mythic troop in Gems of War will be. Because I definitely have not seen a mythic troop like that in the game. Unless it's something that was in the PvP shop and I just never paid attention to it. That stuff sometimes escapes my glance. No? Okay. I mean, it seems like it would generally be an okay troop. Not necessarily on, like, you know, top tier, but it maybe just one or two steps down from that. Because some troops are, like, practically game breakers. And some almost literally are game breakers. This is definitely not quite that, I would say. I mean, damaging all enemies is always a nice thing to have, but that can also be avoided sometimes in the game. Now the fact, I don't know if the number 2 there is highlighted because that is also dependent on the magic stat. Probably not, because then otherwise they would have, like, you know, a magic plus whatever, or some other, you know, mathematical alteration to say what the number would be. Inflicting status effects, not bad. See, now, if this thing, converting a skull into an elemental star, like, if that was 100% chance, that might be a pretty good passive effect of this troop. But otherwise, So, long story short, seems like, assuming this is the new troop that's coming tomorrow, seems like it's good but not great. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say and show for my little preview thing. So now I will actually, just get into the game itself. But whatever you think about that troop and its relative quality and or strength within the game, that doesn't necessarily change the fact that I would still prefer to get it on, like, release weekend rather than possibly put in a whole bunch of resources and try and find some other confounded and or unreliable way to, well, either costly or unreliable way to get it in the future. So, now, in Gems of War, there is, for today, a class trial going on, and I haven't actually, like, maxed out this class. Notice champion level 95. The max is 100. No surprise there. So I might actually do this little class trial event thing. I'm not going to spend any gems on it, but just doing a few battles in it here. So this kind of thing will have pretty significant troop restrictions. To the point where only one mythic troop shows up. I mean, I'm generally pretty partial towards using mythics. Okay, choice of Doom Skull conversion. Ooh, you know what? Okay, that's yellow gems to Doom Skulls. This is either green or red to Doom Skulls. That's inherently blue. And Moira's is always green. So, what's her stuff? Give 2 attack and armor to all dwarf allies. Oh, that's kind of good to have. That's odd. From what I can tell, it seems like the stream might have only crashed on Twitch. That's weird. Because OBS isn't even reporting any dropped frames or anything like that. Anyway. Well, I'll definitely pin the random exercise thing again. Weird. Let's see here. Summon Doomstorm when an enemy dies. Sorry, man. Moira's stats or traits are not inherently helpful in any particular way. So given the options, I think I'll put Bloodhammer in the mix. And if you couldn't tell, I'm going for just converting stuff into Doom Skulls, because especially then if I can do that in such a way where you know, skulls line up to make an extra turn, then, like, why wouldn't I, essentially? Well, if we're sticking with the kingdom theme here, let's make sure that the weapon is from the kingdom as well. Unless I wanted to go with more gem to Doomskull conversion, but I can't even necessarily... Well, I could look through the options if I, like, went under spell effect and said convert gems. But the thing is, that also would include converting gems to other types of gems. Wait, there's... Well, there's another method of red gems to Doomskulls. I mean, if I really wanted to keep that theme going. Otherwise, I could just pick something totally different and say, yeah, I'm gonna explode gems, which is a real quick and easy way for, you know, getting mana to the other troops. All things considered, that would probably be overall more effective, really. Because I don't need to overlap colors that I can convert to Doomskulls. Okay, so I guess there's my team. What colors do we have involved? Blue, yellow, red, brown, green. Not purple. So probably want to go double... Well, probably want to go blue and red and then minus purple. So I'm going to look for a minus purple primarily. There's red and brown. I think that's the best one I've seen so far. Is there really no blue and red one that's minus purple? I guess not. Huh. Weird. Okay, well, I guess that's the banner I'm going with then. And, of course, the whole point of this is to get experience for the Slayer class. So let's use the Slayer class. Okay. Really shouldn't take me terribly long to get through this event, but I thought there aren't really too many classes that I do not already have maxed out. So I might as well do this while I can. Okay, right. She's got... Oh, one of her options is green, so having Moira in there in addition to her would have been overlap anyway. Green does get me an extra turn, and I can choose it. Sweet. I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to be a random selection or like an actual choice that I could make. I can choose, which is good. I also really shouldn't have much trouble with any of these battles in particular. These kinds of events, I think, are more geared towards newer players who actually, like, need the experience for their classes. Okay. Neither red nor green sets up an extra turn here. So, I'm just gonna do this.
Mana surge. Mana surge.
Man.
Mana surge. Mana surge.
No idea why I matched purple there that last turn.
Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge.
Jeez, okay, while I've been waiting on that, I could have already eliminated the first two enemies and done a whole bunch more. I guess especially against lower level enemies, it's not necessarily always worth waiting to get an extra turn out of the gem conversion.
Mana surge.
Man. I guess it's possible I slept a little bit less last night than I did last week. But I'm still kind of thinking like, geez, why am I yawning so much? Never mind the general, you know, fact that I wake up early, work a 10-hour shift, and then come back to my place and do this. Also, I think I tend to yawn more when I definitely just generally feel more tired when I'm not, like, needing to actively focus too much. Just for the fun of it. And for a little extra gold. We'll get the gem conversion there for a whole big match. Okay. Not gonna spend too much time thinking about my moves. Also, if the Valraven troop keeps showing up this much, maybe this event will last a little bit longer than I thought it would. Or using up all my battles in this event could last a little longer than I initially thought. He converts blue. Not that it matters, because the battle's over now anyway. And that happened just from his spell damage. Green gives an extra turn now. And boom, battle over. These battles are going pretty quickly, though. So the thing with the class trial events is that the rewards that you get for clearing so many battles and such is essentially just an extra little boost of, well, a little bit of gold, a little bit of gems, and then a bit of an extra boost of experience for that class. Oh. Maybe after I'm done with this event, because there will probably be some time afterwards, maybe I should break down another recent update that there has been for this game. Like, at least for a certain aspect of it, there's a pretty big change lately. Not necessarily to any particular, way that any battles work or anything like that, but more so to the kingdoms in the game. And in particular, how those kingdoms level up slash, the troops from there get better. Or even just, well, not even always necessarily the troops getting better. That results from kingdom levels and stuff. Anyway. Okay, blue does not give me an extra turn. Neither does red, but at least I'd get some skull matches out of it. So, you know what? Boom. Especially with only 3 enemies left and no chance of that really coming back to bite me in the butt. I figured, why not? Okay, skull match up there. You see, I'm like, if I match red, it gives them an extra turn. Not that that's a big deal when those troops are such a lower level compared to mine. Okay. Changing red or green doesn't really do anything right now. Red would at least get a match, so I guess I'll just go ahead with that. Hey, Slayer Champion level 96. Cool. And that's probably the only actual level I'm going to gain from it. Or the only class level. I think in general, pretty much the way that player and class levels work in this game essentially is each level requires, another experience point to then get to the next level. So, like, level 10 would require 10 experience points before then getting to level 11. And we're talking level 96 now. Now, I did just get 10 points from the one reward thing. And I'm definitely getting at least 1, maybe 2 experience points for each battle that I win. Haven't really been paying close attention to whether it's 1 or 2. It's 2, okay. I mean, it makes sense, especially for an event like this. Now, the primary thing that would maybe complicate one of these battles is if this right here ends up devouring one of my troops. I think I'm gonna match some brown gems here to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mana surge.
No extra turn from green or red or blue.
Mana surge.
Well, shoot. That turned out to be a pretty bad move. Okay, you know what? I might just go for it purely because I don't want to have to deal with the possibility of the bullet getting another chance to devour, or any chance, really. For anyone who doesn't know, devouring essentially means that the troop doing the devouring would gain all of the stats of the troop that they devour. So, like, if any of my troops devoured the Valraven here, for an example, they would gain 29 attack, 27 defense, or armor, whatever, and then 32 life. Magic is not gained from devouring, but the other stats are.
Mana surge.
So, needless to say, going from, enemies with
Mana surge.
kind of low-ish double-digit stats to suddenly having to deal with one that's got stats around like 160 or so, it's a little bit more of a problem. Ooh, I could possibly turn. So, like, yellow to Doom Skulls is an option right now. That's, green would give me an extra turn. And nothing else for the moment. There we go. Okay. So, what? I think I'm getting close to clearing round 3 here, and with the rate that I'm getting more sigils, that means I'll probably be able to at least clear round 4. And if only I could convert yellow right now. Oh well, green gives me an extra turn. Okay. Lucked out a little bit with how that fell. So, I don't know if y'all have heard, but I've been seeing posts online recently. I have not, like, vetted them per se, but I've been seeing posts online recently about, like, companies that, for lack of a better way to put it, went real heavy on AI usage. And essentially those companies finding out that the cost of having the AI do all this stuff that people used to do, turns out, because of all the requests you gotta make of the AI and the way that all that works, it's actually more expensive to have the AI do the things than it was to have the people doing the things. So, whether or not that is actually true, that seems like something that could be. The reason for the expense, they keep using the word tokenization, which, without looking it up, I think essentially has to do with, again, like each time you put in a request to an AI, it, like, makes a token out of that. Or, like, sometimes you could use, say, a chatbot or something like that. You could use it for free up to so many times. But each time you do it, uses a token, essentially. Well, after you use up all the free ones, but I realize that doesn't apply to what are probably, you know, paid premium versions of these AI applications. Still, in general, I'm just finding it a little bit poetically ironic that well, okay. Assuming it's true, finding it a little bit poetically ironic that after so much investment and insistence from these big companies that AI is the big wave of the future for, like, everything, it turns out, oh, wait, maybe now that we're using it, it's proving more costly than we thought. Maybe it's not such a good idea. This could also very much lead to, like, another one of those economic bubble kind of situations like we had with the 2008 or whatever recession. In that case, it was the housing market in particular that had the major bubble pop, and that all kind of came crashing down, and associated stocks plummeted. I'm wondering if this might be the pin that pops the bubble on the whole AI situation. I mean, if we really want to get even more into it, you know, I've seen other posts and or snippets of articles that, you know, describe a bunch of these data centers that were planned having plans get scrapped. And I think it's one of those situations, quite possibly, where the push from the large corporations in particular to utilize, integrate, and promote AI was just so massive, so quickly, that, like, nobody was really taking the time to fully explore, discuss, consider all the ramifications of, you know, such a massive push. And because it got pushed so hard before the technology is probably legitimately ready for such heavy usage, it's like, well, kind of bit off more than we could chew, and this is turning out to be a bad idea. Subsequently, I can't help but wonder, like, if all those, like, if that does turn out to be revealed as a massive problem for the AI push, this whole, you know, whatever the extra cost is that wasn't thought of for some reason. Like, if it truly is there and it becomes a massive problem, then imagine stocks will plummet, and in a way, certainly short term, I gotta imagine then most of the apparent economic gains for anyone at all in the US for the past year or so is going to suddenly just shrivel up, and the truth of the broader economic reality will finally have no curtain left to hide behind. And then nobody will essentially be able to say, oh, but look at the economy, it's doing great. When, for the vast majority of people, it has not been going great well, at least ever since the year started and, you know, tariffs were implemented and all sorts of stuff like that. So, anyway, the update thing in Gems of War. Now, I'm not seeing any markers for it next to any particular kingdoms right now. But if you actually go into a particular kingdom and select it from there, this screen is way different than it used to be. Before, it was just like, okay, you've got a thing to set it as your home kingdom, you've got the power level and some other kind of level. I think that stuff has been, like, I think the different leveling mechanics of kingdoms was, like, just essentially combined into one thing, rather than having two separate types of levels. Now, from here, you can see this kind of info. Level rewards. Huh. Okay, so you can get a look at the bonuses and things that you get from various levels of the kingdom you've selected. At least on Xbox, you press X here and that gets you into the trials. Y is how you get to the Explorer now, which I don't know if I necessarily liked that change. The visual does not make it inherently obvious that, oh yeah, you gotta press Y from here to do an Explorer run. pushing in on the left stick shows you these tasks, which get you essentially like kingdom experience. But there's also, if I press right bumper from there, there's like these crystals that you can use to level up your kingdoms. And top right corner shows you how much of each kind of resource like that you have available. I have not splurged and used a bunch of it as of yet. But long story short, yeah, that's kind of the big update that happened recently. Oh, and I could press right trigger from here and it'll actually like show the total, or it'll give you all the kingdoms and their respective levels. And I don't know what the deal is with this population thing. I kind of figure that's probably just tied to the kingdom levels in a way. I don't think that's really anything important. Anyway, just thought I would point that out. Partially as a way of acknowledging, like, yes, this game keeps having updates. Even beyond just, like, adding a new mythic troop each month and adding new troops of lower rarities weekly. Anyway, I'm thinking for the rest of the stream, we'll do the good old Underspire stuff. Which, well, the rest of the stream that I'll be playing Gems of War, the rest of the Gems of War part of the stream, because technically there's, you know, I got more exercise to redeem before I completely end the stream. Alright. Got two directional options. I rolled even, so we're going here. Now, I forgot to buy extra torches for the Underspire this time around, but I'm wondering if maybe next month, maybe, it might be time to have another crack at seeing how far I can get in the Underspire. Because I have collected a whole bunch more lanterns and stuff as well. I do realize that I wouldn't necessarily be able to demonstrate how far I could go within a single stream like this. Oh, man. There we go. Okay. Took a little while to build up the mana there, but then it's just boom. Battle done. Okay. 3 possibilities now. And I rolled a 3. So we're going down here. And after that, it's going to be 4 options. Man. Now that I've stopped pondering the whole AI situation, my brain is back to easygoing, not thinking real hard, not super focused mode.
Mana surge. Mana surge.
Okay, turns out this isn't even an actual, like, battle option. That just reveals a later portion of the map. If there's any sort of warp tunnel thing, that's possibly where it'll end up leading. Sorry, I noticed my phone vibrating a couple of times in rapid succession. Wanted to make sure it was nothing important. It was not. Okay, rolled a 6, so for 3 actual movement options, that puts us here. Alright, admittedly, I'm not entirely sure at the moment how much I want to keep the fan on that I turned on when I did the push-ups. Like, it's just with it facing me directly right now, it's just a little bit on the edge of chilly to have the fan blowing on me like that. Of course, I could just, you know, turn the fan a bit rather than turning it off. Think I might actually do that real quick. And roll at the same time. Okay. Fan is no longer directly facing me. And I rolled a 5. So that means I'm going here, which is, at least until I get a key, kind of a dead end.
Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge.
Okay. And yeah, that should... that's definitely enough damage. At some point, the enemies will be strong enough to survive a single attack from Fallen Valdis. But... okay, 2 options. I rolled a 2. Lower option it is.
Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge.
Guess I could have just cast the spell and been done with that battle a turn earlier. Oh well. And I got a 4. So, continuing this way. And after this, it seems pretty likely that either I'm arriving at a dead end
Mana surge.
or a boss.
Mana surge.
Which... which technically a boss is a type of dead end. It's just one that is actually helpful. Well, okay, no dead end just yet. Nope, I am not automatically continuing to go this way. Okay, well, I rolled a 2, so I am continuing this way, I mean. Why did I do that? I should have just matched the yellow like it suggested. Oh well. Yep, still one shot. Team wipe. Oh, yep, okay. There's a boss. Now watch me roll an odd number. Yep, 3. And this is only going to increase the number of options after this battle. Okay. Sudden enemy deaths. 3 options. Still very easily doable on a 6-sided die, and I rolled a 6. To the boss. Ooh, yeah, I get 2 colors out of that move. And win. Oh yeah, I forgot. I was maybe kind of wanting to use the, at least some of the trinkets that I have. But no, not that. Those trinkets. Especially the ones where I have over 50 of them. Yeah, that number increased rather quickly once the latest Underspire update hit. Okay, I rolled a 1 this time. There were still 3 options because I could go here now, but I rolled a 1, which takes me up here instead. By the way, when I end up doing the whole, like, how far can I go kind of thing, I am not going to be randomizing directions. I'm just going to go whatever way that I normally would. And if I know that one path is going to get me further, then I'm going to do it. Okay, you see now this, like, again, not even a battle. Just some trinkets. Another reason why the update has significantly increased my trinket counts. Because there are spaces like that where it's just like, hey, have some trinkets. Do you expect it not going far without it? Well, like, if the point is to go as far as possible, I don't want randomization, you know, putting a damper on that goal. But that's not what I'm doing right now. That'll be some other month. Okay, rolled a 6, and she'll take me here. Like, the main reason I'm even considering re-attempting to see how far I can go is because I've saved up a kind of decent number of lanterns.
Mana
And I mean, while I generally don't... While I generally only use the lanterns on boss battles, I can use them at other times. And I should have at least 22 of them by... Or 22 of those? Anyway, whatever. 22 lanterns by the time next month rolls around. In addition to, like, okay, so if I also bought 5 extra torches each day, it's a lot. I rolled a 2 this time, which means I'm going here. And that could very well increase the possible directions. Ugh. Just for something different. I'm gonna have that troop be the one to wipe the enemy team. Huh, okay. Like, now, there's 4 possibilities. Do I go with the 6-sided die and just, like, I don't know, exclude 1 and 6? Or if I did it like that, 1 would be whatever I would deem the worst choice, 6 would be the best. Sure, maybe we'll run it like that. That or a D20. Yeah, that was the other thought that I had. You know what? We'll roll the D20. I don't roll it as much. Okay, so I rolled a 7, which I guess would, you know, if you go through the cycle of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 option, then, although, technically, yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if we're discounting nat 1 or 20, then yeah, I would end up here. Maybe it's just because this is the context in which it shows up most, but having the idea of, you know, natural least or most of whatever kind of die just seems to fit better with rolling a d20. Good.
Mana surge. Mana surge. Mana surge.
Alright. Oh, hey, I got 2 torches from that. Alright, we're back to 3 options, which means back to a d6. And I rolled a 6. So we're going over here. Also, now I'm unsure whether to keep going until the next ad break, because that got delayed a little bit is why I'm not sure. Maybe delayed isn't the right word. It got, like, reset because of the brief loss of signal or whatever on Twitch. Because, oh man. The other thing would be to just a couple minutes before the ad break figure out what exercise I would do. I rolled a 5, by the way. Figure out what exercise I would do that. But then I'd probably be pushing up against the ad break right when I would try to raid anyway. So, That, I think I've answered my own question. I'll go until the next ad break. Unless the, stream decides to reset itself again. Also, we're actually still leveling up the Slayer class. Because I'm using that for these battles. Okay, just 2 options now. Rolled a 6, so we're headed down here. I am apparently quite tired, though, based on all the yawning, at least. Okay, still 2 options. Seems like that could be the case for a little while. Well, actually, if I wound up getting that, then there would only be 1 option left. Anyway, I rolled a 4. Yep, still one-shotting the enemy teams. Alright, still 2 options. And this time I got a 3. Which means after this battle, there will be no choice. It will only be the lower path. But then that's gonna split. Okay. So, yeah. Literally, this is my only choice right now. At least within the Underspire. Yeah, I just had a thought regarding the lantern usage and stuff. Like, whenever I might do that push to see how far I could get, it'll be interesting because I'm thinking that's actually going to be the first time I've used a lantern in a non-boss battle. Does this actually do any? Well, okay. I thought maybe that was a room where I just got something, and it turns out I was right. I think the one with that symbol in particular always gives torches. It's a pretty rare one to find, though. Okay. Given reading order, this is actually the second one. And I rolled a 2, so... Guess I'm headed this way. But, yeah, supposedly there's this thing with torches where if you use them on a non-boss room, they actually, like, light up the path 2 spaces out instead of just 1. But I've never actually used a lantern anywhere but a boss room, so I can neither confirm nor deny that the lanterns actually work that way. Okay. Oh. Well, that's interesting. So that, for lack of a better term, is a tunnel. Leads to another part of the... See, it did end up being close to what was revealed by the, like, seeing eye thing. Still, I guess, inherently 2 path choices here. I'm like, that does potentially complicate the reading order, though. Because really... I'm like, if you disregard the fact that you're going through a tunnel, the room that is on the other side of the tunnel would technically be before this one in the reading order. Because it's, like, higher up the quote-unquote page, or map, we'll say. So, because I rolled a 6, and this one's technically further along in the reading order, yeah. Going this way. Doing this battle. Now I'm just pretty much saying whatever random thoughts come to my mind. I rolled a 4. Technically, that's still later in the reading order. Anyway, sharing just stuff that comes to my mind. So, work was kind of an unusual week. I mean, not necessarily regarding what I did, just multiple people were not there this week, including my boss, or at least my direct boss. His boss was still there, though, so, like, stuff that I normally would have reported to him, I instead reported to the next person up the chain. But there's one other person kind of around my area of the workshop, or whatever you want to call it. They usually use the term plant. So, my area of the plant, there's one person who usually deals with some of the wire stuff that was out. Another person on, like, the other end of the plant who was out this week. And I genuinely don't know what their situation is going to be moving forward. I rolled a 2 here, by the way. So, this is now earlier than the one through the tunnel in the reading order. And since I rolled a 2, that means now I'm doing this. So anyway, just the lacking of a couple of people I normally interact with a fair bit. Just, again, made it a bit unusual. Not necessarily bad or good for it. Just a little different. Oh, hey. This is a goblin team. They normally would have gotten an extra turn right there, but they didn't. Because, due to the... what do they call it? Like, the constellation bonuses. I have a whatever percentage chance of canceling out enemy extra turns. Oh, geez, okay. 5 match there, 5 match there, 4 match there, 4 match there. Yeah, that's enough damage to win there. Okay. And Twitch ad break is actually already in progress. So yeah, in the Astral Spire here, this 36% chance for the enemy to miss extra turns from spells in 4+ matches. That's why the one goblin thing didn't, didn't cause an extra turn, essentially. Okay. Ad break is over now. Which means it's about time to wrap things up. But, of course, before I do that, one more exercise. At least. Unless somebody else comes in and redeems something before I'm done with this. All right, what exercise am I doing? I realize I kind of held this at an angle, but whatever. I rolled a 3. So, squats. All right. And let's see. Not doing 1. Okay. Rolled a 2 for squat quantity per set with 4 sets, so doing at least 8. May very well end up doing quite a bit more than 8. Squats, I can do a fair number of without it being too strenuous. Okay, give me a sec. Put my microphone back over this way. Move my chair out of the way. Take the sandals off so I'm not putting all the floor dirt from them onto the exercise mat. Okay, squats. At least 8. 1. It doesn't feel like it's wide enough. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know what? Now that I know for sure I've done 8, maybe I could just, well, no. I was going to say maybe I could do my usual, like, telling you what's coming up in future streams thing while I'm doing this, but I realize, no, I typically do that while I'm trying to find a raid target, so probably not the best idea. I have completely lost track of how many squats I've done, because once I do as many as I know I'm supposed to, I just, like, sometimes start talking if I want to keep doing more squats, and then I just do squats while I'm talking and potentially lose track of how many I've done. However many that was, I'll consider that enough. Okay. So, now I will mention, which I should get better at doing this more. If you're interested in joining the channel Discord server, there's a link to it there in the chat. Essentially, you'll have a real convenient way to find all of my video edits, as well as I alert everybody when I'm about to go live for my streams. And we also just talk about some random stuff in between all of that. Okay. Now to find a raid target. Meanwhile, I will let y'all know what's coming up in my live streams for the next week or so. So, tomorrow, Borderlands 4 side quests in Carcadia Burn. I think that's going to be the last bit of side questing before I get back to the main story. Then next Thursday, obviously, we'll continue the Bible study in Job with chapters 25 and 26. And I'm a little bit torn. I'm unsure of whether I want to try and use the second hour of that to get some mission stars in Melody of Memory, or if I want to continue that Slay the Spire run that we started up, because I don't think I'm necessarily going to need a ton of time to get those mission stars. Like, I would think that could be accomplished within next Friday's stream. It might be like 1 hour of getting the mission stars, and then maybe some of the next before then the other stuff is revealed. So, for that reason, I'm kind of leaning towards saying that I'll do Slay the Spire next week. And then honestly, even after I finish the main world tour thing in Melody of Memory, I can keep coming back to that, getting any other mission stars that I missed, and or doing other songs in the game that I missed, just as like a more officially a side questing kind of thing. So anyway, once again, sorry. That was a bit like kind of random train of thought way of communicating all that. So, plan for upcoming streams. Tomorrow is Borderlands 4. Next Thursday, Job 25 and 26, followed by probably Slay the Spire, continuing the custom run that we did a couple weeks back, or that we started a couple weeks back. And then a week from tomorrow is Melody of Memory, getting mission stars, and then like probably finishing the world tour thing. And if I finish that way earlier than expected, I might toss in like a game review sort of thing or some other shorter recording stuff. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Not sure why it has struck me in particular on this day, but the notion has struck me to send the raid over to Aki and Fam. Currently playing Star Wars Battlefront 2. Yeah, I've pretty much said all I have to say before we get things rolling here. So yeah, that's going to do it from me. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another stream. Feel free to check out edited stuff over on YouTube and short videos that are shared across all social media platforms. But whatever ends up happening. Till next time, stay cool, everybody.